Good afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you? We hope and trust that you are all very well, and I say that sincerely. I sit here in Van der Kloof, miles away from my kids, and knowing that so many people, so many decent, God-fearing people are in situations and locations that they'd rather not be in. And there's a kind of a reciprocal pain, you know. So many people want to leave, and I wish that my kids somehow could leave or would leave Johannesburg. It really is a very sincere thing. I want to talk to you about an article that could have been entitled, Why is Suidlanders Always Correct? By the world's leading investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh. It's not. It's entitled, How America Took Out the Nord Stream Pipeline. And it is making waves around the world. Seymour Hersh is almost certainly the world's greatest ever investigative journalist. He's ancient now, he's 85 years old, but he has published on his Substack an article, as I described, entitled How America Took Out the Nord Stream Pipeline, with the subtitle, The New York Times called it a mystery, but the United States executed a covert sea operation that was kept secret until now. Now, you will remember that on the 26th of September last year, 3 of the 4 pipelines as such, of Nord Streams 1 and 2 were sabotaged. You will remember that Nord Stream 1 was operational, not at that time because there was a dispute over the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but generally speaking, it had been and could have been on any given day operational. There was gas in it. And the Nord Stream 2, its 2 pipelines, were lying dormant, never having been operational, because immediately after Olaf Scholz took office in late 2021 as the Chancellor of Germany, he refused to sign off the inspections and the what have you, the very last part of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline build project. So it never came into operation. You will remember, I'm sure, that we explained at the time, certainly very well on my WhatsApp groups, not my WhatsApp groups, Suidlanders WhatsApp groups, but the ones that I run, that it could only have been a United States operation. And we gave a tremendous amount of evidence for why. The location of vessels in the vicinity at the time, the capacity to be able to execute such an operation, and other pieces of evidence. It was apparent to any thoughtful, objective person that that was an operation executed either by the United States of America or by one of the more advanced NATO nations or by a combined team. Of course, it could not have been executed by Andorra, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, San Marino or some other absurd Switzerland, but by Germany, by the United Kingdom, France, the USA, and possibly by one or two of the Scandinavian states. That is to say, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland. They don't all four equally qualify as Scandinavian or identify themselves as Scandinavian, but those four northernmost advanced Western democracies. You will recall that sometime after that, Suidlanders was the second, as far as I know, and I spend many hours a day just doing research to ensure that we are empowered at Suidlanders with the best knowledge, that we have good knowledge of the world, its affairs, of South Africa, its affairs. Sorry, I don't mean to be overly emphatic, but that's what I spend a lot of time doing, ensuring that we know what's cooking, that we're not some backwater, that our status, Suidlanders' status, as the largest organization of its sort in the world by far, is matched by our acumen and our abilities. That's vital, absolutely vital. So you will recall that we were about the second organization in the world to reveal the then leaked, so it was many months after the publication, as you'll hear in a second, RAND report of 22 January. So the report was published, it's the report of the 22nd of January that was leaked 7 or 8 months later, in which the RAND Corporation, that's the correct title I believe, which is a United States non-governmental but very much in favor of United States interests think tank. Very powerful, very influential. Explained why it was necessary to goad and antagonize Russia into a war with Ukraine. Namely, because in the difficult times, in historical terms, that the world is entering at present, it would be important, it would be vital to the United States as the hegemon. Hegemon means leader, in the sense of superpower. So the United States is number one. The United States is the biggest and the best and the richest and the most powerful and the most influential, and we want to remain that. In order to remain the hegemon of the globe, particularly in economic terms, given that the pie is getting smaller, we're going into very dark times, there will be less to go around. Our debt is crippling us. We foresee financial crises and stock markets crashes and depressions and recessions. And China is getting stronger and stronger to compete with us. In order for us to retain our position, one of the things that we must do is wreck Europe. In other words, we will be stronger by virtue of the weakening of our rivals. Europe as an economic, a very, very powerful economic force. We gave a lot of coverage to this. It now turns out that we were right all along. And let me tell you, I speak to many people all over the world, and some of them are astonishingly capable. And nobody seemed to quite take the bait that we were putting out there regarding the sabotage of the Nord Stream's pipelines. And, by the way, the subsequent attempted sabotage of the Turk Stream pipeline, failed attempt, and the then subsequent successful sabotage of the Siberian pipeline in Russia. All in the span of September, October, November, December, roughly last year. Actually, September, October, November, I think. But we have been vindicated. And if anybody is wondering how it is that Mr. Miller gets so much right, in my case, it's easy. I do a lot of research. I'm bound to know some things. It's just a matter of time. And the time is a function of the salary that Mr. Miller pays me. There's no guru-ness in this stuff. But Mr. Miller, on the other hand, is, I would say, the beneficiary of not being hidebound by false doctrine. If you're not hidebound, if you're not constrained, if you're not, in one of those suits that they put psychiatric patients in, of the media, of the mainstream narrative, of the acceptable political point of view, if you are able to be open to things that make sense, things that add up, things that are logical, things that are empirically demonstrable. Empirically demonstrable means that you can demonstrate it in a scientific manner through facts, figures, data, statistics. You are bound to do better than Adrian Basson at News 24, or these poor guys that I watch every day from the Center for Risk Analysis and the Institute for Race Relations, who just haven't got a clue, because everything that they have to regurgitate has to be regurgitated in a specific form, a form that fits into their liberal worldview. So I'm going to read to you briefly from Seymour Hersh's article. The US Navy's Diving and Salvage Center can be found in a location down what was once a country lane in rural Panama City in Florida. I'm going to skip some words in the interests of brevity. So if the syntax is not always 100%, please be a little bit patient. The center has been training highly skilled deepwater divers for decades, who are capable of using C4 explosives to clear harbors and unexploded ordnance, as well as blowing up foreign oil rigs, fouling intake valves for undersea power plants, and destroying the locks on crucial shipping canals. Gee. Last June, the Navy divers, I'm skipping a lot, operating under the cover of a widely publicized mid-summer NATO exercise known as Belt Ops 2, Balt, as in the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea is the sea between Norway and Denmark and Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia and the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad and Germany, but it's in that hooky there between Sweden and Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, right where the Nord Stream pipelines run. Planted the remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines. So Nord Stream 1 was actually composed of 2 pipelines, and Nord Stream 2 was composed of 2 pipelines. 2 of the pipelines, which were known collectively as Nord Stream 1, had been providing Germany and much of Western Europe with cheap Russian natural gas for more than a decade. And I explained earlier about how Nord Stream 2 was not commissioned, even though it had been built. It had been agreed upon. The Russians had paid for the building. They'd done all of the building of it. And the Germans said, we're not going to sign it off. Okay. A White House spokesman said in an email, this is false and complete fiction. A spokesman for the Central Intelligence Agency wrote, this claim is completely and utterly false. Biden's decision to sabotage the pipelines came after more than 9 months of highly secret back and forth debate inside Washington's national security community. There was a vital bureaucratic reason for relying on the graduates of the center's hardcore diving school in Panama City. The divers were Navy only. Therefore, their covert operations didn't have to be reported to Congress or briefed in advance to the Senate and House leadership. President Biden and his foreign policy team, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, that means Foreign Minister or Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Victoria Nuland, the notorious Undersecretary of State for Policy, had been vocal and consistent in their hostility to the 2 pipelines, which ran side by side for 750 miles under the Baltic Sea from 2 different ports in northeastern Russia. How is that northeastern? That's northwestern Russia, near the Estonian border, passing close to the Danish island of Bornholm before ending in northern Germany. Okay. They had been a boon for the Russian economy. A boon means like a bonus, a big luck for the German economy, which enjoyed an abundance of cheap Russian natural gas. So much so that they could sell excess gas, the Germans could sell excess gas at a profit throughout all of Western Europe. From its earliest days, Nord Stream 1 was seen by Washington and its anti-Russian NATO partners as a threat to Western dominance. The holding company behind it, Nord Stream AG, that's the German for Pty Limited, Aktiengesellschaft, was incorporated in Switzerland in 2005, blah, 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 blah. And the oil and gas revenues, in other words, the portion that went to the Russian government, there were about 4 countries in partnership, and the Russian Gazprom was like the controlling body or the dominant body, and so when it made money, it sent the money to, or it paid tax. It were estimated in some years to amount to as much as 45% of Russia's annual budget. I would say that is a gross exaggeration, but okay. America's political fears were real. Now just bear in mind, this guy is not taking the Rand Corporation report into account. he's judging more on the information that he's been able to receive. Whereas you and I are not so hidebound, and we can incorporate, like the secret Rand Corp report that has never, by the way, been denied. And I think there's a very, very simple reason for that. All that was leaked was the executive summary. If anybody was to contest that report, the leak could then reveal the whole report, which would undermine the credibility of anybody who denied that the executive summary was true. America's political fears were real. Putin would now have an additional and much needed major source of income. And Germany and the rest of Western Europe would become addicted to low-cost natural gas supplied by Russia, while diminishing European reliance on America. Nord Stream 1 was dangerous enough in the view of NATO and Washington. But Nord Stream 2, whose construction was completed in September of 2021, would, if approved by German regulators, I'll pause and so to resume, Nord Stream 2 would double the amount of cheap gas that would be available to Germany and Western Europe. It would also provide enough gas for more than 50% of Germany's annual consumption. Opposition to Nord Stream 2 flared on the eve of the Biden inauguration in January 2021, when Senate Republicans, led by Ted Cruz of Texas, repeatedly raised the political threat of cheap Russian natural gas during the confirmation hearing of Blinken as Secretary of State. By then, a unified Senate had successfully passed a law that, as Cruz told Blinken, halted the pipeline in its tracks. There would be enormous political and economic pressure from the German government, then headed by Angela Merkel, to get the second pipeline online. Now, I should add that Donald Trump, in spite of his good relationship with Vladimir Putin, once said something. In fact, he may have made two bold public statements. Certainly, there was one in which he said something like, the big stick with which we have to hit Russia is Nord Stream. Now, it doesn't belong to the USA, and it's not being used by the USA. How is it the USA's stick? So this has been in conservative, never mind liberal, never mind democratic, never mind the evil circles, the supposedly good, if any Suidlanders still believes that Republican politicians are good. Victoria Nuland had also said, we will not allow it to happen. We will not allow it to happen. Joe Biden also said, you must have seen the videos. I know Suidlanders. I'm sure that Suidlanders, on average, are the most gluttonous, greedy consumers of social media information of any group in South Africa. I cannot believe that there's anybody else out there as a group that compares to the average Suidlander for consuming good quality information. People have seen this video of Biden going on about it will not happen. The long and the short of it is that it did happen, that there was planning, that they decided to execute this under the cover of Bolt Ops 22. They planted the explosives. They were going to blow up the pipelines during Bolt Ops 22, they decided that that wouldn't be a good idea, since the Baltic exercise, this giant sea exercise of NATO, was occurring right there. The Baltic Sea is not a big sea, it's tiny by South African standards. We, with our enormous coastline and infinite expanses of water between us and the Antarctic, between us and South America, between us and Australia, between us and India, Madagascar. Too obvious. So they would do it 3 months later. And since then, this guy, Seymour Hersh, the author, has received good intelligence from people who were involved in this. And that's how he's able to, I would say this is a, dear me, maybe a 6 or 8, 10, 12, 20 page article. You know, standard A4 pages. Perhaps as few as 15, but perhaps as many as 20. In the immediate aftermath of the pipeline bombing, the American media treated it like an unsolved mystery. Russia was repeatedly cited as a likely culprit, spurred on by calculated leaks from the White House, but without ever establishing a clear motive for such an act of self-sabotage beyond simple retribution. So he's saying, well, it could have been simple retribution, spitefulness on the Russians' part. But as we explained at the time, 5 months ago, that didn't make any sense at all. It's one thing to cut off your nose to spite your face. It's another thing to cut off your nose and not get any spite for your face. It would have spited the Europeans. They would have been without gas, as we know. But it would also have deprived the Russians of an immediate income that they were that would have helped, had those pipelines been operational at that time, to fund their war with Ukraine. So not only do you lose your pipelines, you cut your nose off, you spite your face, you spite the Europeans, but you double disadvantage yourself in as much as you're losing revenue that you need in a time of conflict and war. And then you have to repair them, which indeed the Russians have done, which just goes to show. Besides which, there was never any evidence of a Russian presence there. You know, the Swedes, Norwegians, Danes, and Germans are very, very technologically advanced people, in spite of the fact that their militaries have been eviscerated, disemboweled. What they do have is excellent. Their undersea monitoring echo devices, their earthquake monitoring devices, which would pick up, and did indeed pick up, those explosions at 2 on that morning of the 26th of September, is brilliant. It's second to none. It's incomparable. And there was never any evidence that there had been Russian ships there, Russian submarines there, Russian surveillance planes, Russian drones. But there were American ships there for bolt ops, and there were American ships, I can tell you this. We revealed it at the time, that it was very, very little known, with the help of some Suidlanders friends in the USA who had access to certain satellite data, that there were American ships loitering in the area some miles away at that time. Just, hey, we happen to be there. So, I don't want to make this video too long. It's already run for 30 minutes. You get the gist of the story. And that is that we are sorry to have to tell, you know, I got a message today from somebody in the German parliament and one yesterday. And today's message read something like just crazy or crazy. In other words, these people are struggling. Our beloved friends, I'm not demeaning them. And if they watch this video and they send me a little note saying, yeah, I heard you talking about me, it'll be with a little smiley face after it. These people, even now, cannot comprehend. They are incredulous that their own team did this to them. At the time that we told them they wouldn't take the bait, they wouldn't accept it, they couldn't believe it. And they're still in pain. Our team did this. We're starving. We're starving. We're freezing in midwinter here. You know, the coldest part of winter in the northern hemisphere is, well, it's not really midwinter, I suppose, but it's this time, February. We're freezing to death here, and we're paying whatever, $1,000 a ton of natural gas to heat our homes. They can't believe it. They couldn't believe it when we told them 5 months ago. Excuse me, I've got like a little hiccupy acid reflux thing going. So yeah, that is the long and the story, the long and the short of the story. Now you know. These conspiracy theories that we talk about all of the time, that sometimes seem outlandish, never. It will happen. It will happen that we have egg on our face sometime. Yeah, this is normal life, real life in the real world. But hitherto, I can hardly think of an example of Suidlanders making some terrific claim about some strange goings on in the world whereby we were wrong. Yeah, that's it. Guys, thank you very much for watching this video. Good night, and God bless all of you. Cheerio.